You're working harder than ever, but money slips through your fingers like water. The Bible reveals a surprising culprit you've probably never considered. Lust isn't just destroying your relationships, it's sabotaging your wealth. Most Christians know that lust is a sin, but few understand its devastating economic impact. When we think of biblical warnings about lust, we typically focus on sexual morality and marital faithfulness. Yet Scripture consistently links unchecked desire, whether for pleasure, possessions, or power, to financial ruin and poverty. From Solomon's downfall to the prodigal son's bankruptcy, the Bible presents a clear pattern. Lust doesn't just corrupt character, it drains bank accounts. This isn't about legalism or prosperity gospel, it's about understanding how God designed desire to work and what happens when we pervert that design. The wisdom literature, prophets, and New Testament writings all point to the same truth: the person enslaved by lust cannot build lasting wealth because lust, by its very nature, is a poverty-producing force. The word lust makes most modern Christians uncomfortable. We've reduced it to something that happens in bedrooms and relegated it to awkward youth group discussions. But the Bible's definition is far broader and more dangerous than we've been taught. 1 John chapter 2, verse 16 identifies three deadly lusts: the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. These aren't abstract theological categories. They're the precise mechanisms by which your wealth is being systematically destroyed right now, today, in ways you haven't even recognized. The lust of the flesh demands immediate physical gratification. The lust of the eyes covets what belongs to others. The pride of life requires you to project success even while drowning in secret debt. Together, they form an unholy trinity that keeps you perpetually poor while promising satisfaction that never comes. Lust operates on a simple but devastating economic principle: it always chooses now over later. It's the financial equivalent of selling your birthright for a bowl of soup, and you do it repeatedly without even realizing it. Every time lust wins, your future loses. Consider how lust rewires your financial decision-making. That subscription you don't really need but can't cancel. That's lust telling you that temporary pleasure is worth permanent payment. The clothes still tagged in your closet. Lust convinced you that owning them would make you feel complete. The credit card balance that grows despite your promises. That's the interest you pay on desires you couldn't delay. The pornography industry alone generates billions annually, not through overt transactions but through the slow financial hemorrhaging of men and women trapped in compulsive cycles. They upgrade internet speeds for faster streaming, purchase privacy software to hide their shame, lose productivity at work, sabotage relationships that could lead to shared financial stability, and often turn to paid content when free material no longer satisfies. The industry understands what Scripture warned thousands of years ago: sexual lust is a poverty-producing spirit. But it's not just sexual desire. The lust of the eyes has given us a generation drowning in consumer debt. You see the influencer's lifestyle, the neighbor's car, the colleague's vacation photos, and suddenly your perfectly adequate life feels insufficient. Proverbs warns that the leech has two daughters: give and give. Lust always has its hand out, always demanding more, never satisfied with what it has already consumed. The terrifying truth is that lust creates a tolerance effect. What satisfied yesterday no longer works today. The dopamine hit diminishes, so you need a bigger purchase, a more expensive experience, a riskier thrill. This isn't sustainable economics, it's a death spiral. And the Bible, thousands of years before modern psychology confirmed it, told us exactly how this works and where it leads. The Bible doesn't give us sanitized case studies. It shows us real people whose lust led them from prosperity to ruin, and the pattern is always the same: unchecked desire, compromised judgment, financial devastation. Solomon started with everything. God gave him wisdom, wealth beyond measure, and a kingdom that made other nations jealous. But Ecclesiastes and 1 Kings tell us what happened when wisdom met lust. 700 wives and 300 concubines weren't just a moral failure, they were an economic catastrophe. Each foreign wife brought her gods, her priests, her temples that needed building and maintaining. Solomon's lust for women led to lust for their approval, which led to massive expenditures on idolatry. The man who built God's temple ended his life building shrines to demons, and his kingdom split in two immediately after his death. His son inherited a bankrupt nation and a civil war. Then there's the prodigal son, perhaps the Bible's most vivid picture of lust's economic trajectory. He demanded his inheritance early and headed to a distant country where nobody knew his name. There, with money in his pocket and freedom in his veins, he lived what Scripture calls riotous living. The text doesn't detail every transaction, but we know how it ends: broke, alone, competing with pigs for food. His lust didn't just cost him money, it cost him dignity, relationship, and identity. He went from son to slave in the time it takes desire to burn through a fortune. Achan's story is darker still. When Israel conquered Jericho, God commanded that all plunder be devoted to him. But Achan saw a beautiful Babylonian garment, some silver, and a bar of gold. The lust of the eyes seized him. He took what was forbidden, buried it under his tent, and thought no one would know. His secret lust cost him everything: his life, his family's lives, and Israel's victory in their next battle. One man's covetousness created communal poverty and death. The book of Proverbs reads like a financial advisor's warning labels for life. Scattered throughout its wisdom are explicit connections between lust and poverty that we've somehow missed in our modern readings. Solomon, writing from experience, knew exactly how desire destroys wealth. Proverbs chapter 6 warns that the adulteress will reduce you to a loaf of bread. Think about that image: you started with abundance, with potential, with resources, and you end with just enough to survive another day. The passage isn't being metaphorical, it's being literal. Sexual immorality is expensive. It costs you focus at work, leading to missed promotions. It costs you marriage stability, leading to divorce settlements and split households that are far more expensive than unified ones. It costs you respect, and respect is social capital that translates to economic opportunity. Chapter 5 calculates the cost even more precisely: lest you give your honor to others and your years to the cruel one, lest strangers be filled with your strength, and your labors go to the house of a foreigner. This is economic language. Your strength means your productive capacity, your ability to generate income. Lust redirects your life's work from your own household to someone else's profit. You're working, but someone else is getting rich from your labor. The pattern repeats throughout Proverbs: the man who loves pleasure will be a poor man. He who loves wine and oil will not be rich. The one who follows worthless pursuits lacks judgment. Each warning connects disordered desire to financial consequences. This isn't coincidence, it's cause and effect. Lust and poverty are business partners, and God's wisdom literature functions as an audit of that destructive partnership, showing us exactly how the transaction works and why we keep ending up on the losing side. The good news buried in Scripture's warnings is this: you're not destined to stay trapped. The same Bible that diagnoses lust as a poverty-producing force also prescribes the cure, and it's more practical than you might expect. Paul tells Timothy that godliness with contentment is great gain. Contentment isn't settling for mediocrity, it's breaking lust's power by refusing to let your happiness depend on acquiring what you don't have. When you're content, you can finally build wealth because you're no longer hemorrhaging resources chasing satisfaction in purchases, experiences, or pleasures that never deliver what they promise. Contentment creates margin, and margin creates opportunity. Self-control, listed as a fruit of the Spirit, is perhaps the most economically valuable virtue a Christian can develop. Every time you exercise self-control, you're literally choosing future abundance over present impulse. You're saying no to the purchase that would feel good now but cost you later. You're saying no to the relationship that promises excitement but would derail your stability. You're saying no to the vice that offers escape but steals your productive hours. The biblical solution isn't to eliminate desire but to channel it correctly. God created desire, He just intended it to drive you toward Him and His purposes, not away from them. When your deepest desire is for God's kingdom and His righteousness, Jesus promises that everything else gets added to you. That's not prosperity gospel manipulation, that's kingdom economics. Seek first His kingdom, and watch how differently you handle money when you're not using it to medicate lust. The path forward requires brutal honesty about where lust has established strongholds in your life. Is it pornography? Shopping? Fantasy relationships? Social media comparison? Entertainment binging? Food? Each one has a financial cost you've been ignoring. Name it, confess it, and systematically dismantle the access points. The freedom that follows isn't just spiritual, it's financial. When you stop feeding lust, you'll be shocked how much money you suddenly have to build the life God designed for you. Please subscribe and turn on the notification button for more interesting videos.